I had a customer send me in a very classic repair, but when I saw the board, I was shocked. Let's go to the microscope and chase the fix. So this is an Xbox One X, as you can see by the title, and if you can take a look there, we have quite a bit of damage. So if you take a quick gander at this side of the board, you can tell that we are missing a trace right here, which I'm just gonna go ahead and remove. So this is definitely going to be a fun repair to do, but we will have to run a jumper to our new display chip. So for those that don't know, this is an Xbox One X that has a very famous issue. On the Xbox One X, it has a display chip called the TDP158. It is a display redriver chip. The signals come in, they go through this chip, and then they go out right to the HDMI port. Now, it looks like my customer obviously attempted this repair. It does actually take quite a bit of heat to actually remove this chip and to do it successfully, but we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna fix this, we're gonna put a brand new chip on. Thankfully, he actually included the chip, so that's gonna be nice. And then we're also going to have to fix this trace here as well. So let's get started. As per the usual, add a slight bit of flux. Turn on the fume extractor to save our lungs from dying. Now, when I work on stuff like this as prior repair attempt, I always like to come in with a little bit of fresh solder first. And the reason is because I don't know what solder was used in this area, and I know my solder, and at least I like to imagine I know my solder. Looks like most of it is just sticking on this giant ground plane, so we're gonna have to wick a lot of this away. Look at that, so satisfying. Now the tip I'm using typically is what I would use for this, but my tip is not delivering enough heat to the board because the board is acting like a giant heat sink. Now that I've got my tip swapped out for my knife blade, I should be able to wick this away very, very cleanly. Okay, now that we're done with that, we're going to go ahead and clean up the board and make sure it is nice. And now the thing I don't want to happen is I don't want this pad that goes, this one right here, go directly to the ground to touch this point, because this obviously is not ground here. This pad touching this pad is fine because they are both going to the center ground pad. And then of course I'll just run a wire from here to the chip once the chip is installed. I'm going to add a little bit of flux there, which is quite a bit, but you know, like I said, this board takes a lot of heat, so we want to use as much flux as possible. Now we just have to solder the chip in place. While the chip is still hot, I'm going to come in here with some good fresh solder. Add a little bit of flux because I got a little bit of bridging. Maybe we should just flow some flux all the way around it. Way more than we need, but it'll work. Let me get the solder off of my iron tip. Solder on this side. Now we can go ahead and flow these guys up here. And this side of the chip always takes a ton of heat to flow these joints. I always like to flow the solder around the chip when the chip is still hot. Just makes the solder flow a little bit easier. Maybe we should float the chip a little bit and reflow it because it is not quite on center. Let's go ahead and do that. Now that we refloated the chip so it was a little bit more center, you can tell that the pins are going to be a little bit better. We'll go ahead and touch up obviously some of these solder joints on this side. Yeah, let's go ahead and do that now while the chip is hot. I'm going to bring in some heat a little bit here too to help flow these joints because they do not want to flow good. There we go. I think that's it actually, right there. Now we're going to clean it up with a little bit of isopropyl alcohol and a toothbrush and we can check out our joints. So there is still a little bridge there. Let's go ahead and add a little bit of flux to the area. We have to anyways because I got to run that jumper. Let's see if I can fix it from this side. Alright, yeah, looks like that was it. Now we just have to run our jumper from this point up to here. Now our jumper wire is on the board. Let's go ahead and put a little bit of solder on the end of it. Okay. Alright, our wire is connected. Alright, now let's go ahead and connect it over here. We don't need it to connect there. It's a very thin jumper wire and it has a very, very small amount of enamel on it. But it wants to just solder into other things and that's not what we want. We can go ahead and clean it up. And as you can see, they're all as good as they can be considering the damage. Okay, so we have our board fixed. Now, I know a lot of people that do this type of work may suggest, Chase, you should put some solder masks down for that wire that we installed. Now, the reason I'm not going to is because I've dealt with solder mask in the past with dealing with stuff like this. And when it comes to these chips, especially if it's just one jumper, then if the chip has to be replaced in the future, then you have to deal with a bunch of gummy mess that with the solder mask. And it just makes the job so much simpler that if we have to run another jumper jumper, we just change the chip, put the new chip on, run the jumper back, it's good to go. But if you need a repair like this, my website is in the description down below. Next time we'll chase the fix. I'll see you guys.